When was the last time you took a leap of faith, trusting that everything is going to work out? Do you crave growth, or are you merely content with the status quo? If you want more out of your life, out of your career, and out of your relationships, you are in the right place. Take the leap and discover how to create a life by design rather than living it by default. Real success starts with you. Now here's your host, Colleen Biggs.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of Take the Leap. I am your host, Colleen Biggs, and we've got another amazing guest for you today. I feel like we're living in a world today that's slightly hostile. Everyone seems to be a little on edge all the time. And that really started in COVID. I remember that I've had these four friends, the four of us. So I've had three friends for 25 years that I swore we knew everything about each other. And then when we got together during COVID, and people were talking about getting vaccinations and things like that. And I said, oh, yeah, no, I'm not. I would never get that vaccination. And in a second, my friends turned on me and they were like, what, are you one of those families? And I was like, what just happened right now? I think my entire friendship with them for 25 years, I never, ever knew a political stand that they had because we never talked about it ever. And then all of a sudden, COVID happened. And then it seemed like, just in the last several years, we've started dividing and it's all about right or left or blue or red and I'm just kind of tired of it because we're all human beings. And I've always believed and still believe, even in every corporation I've ever worked for, that you hire the best woman or the man for the job, right? That's always been my thought based on personality, based on skills, based on who's going to be the best for that position. And I've always felt that way. And I kind of really feel that way about everything when it comes to the country. But the one thing that's getting the worst, that's getting lost, that we're feeling where we are at the level that we're at for every single one of us here in the United States is I don't feel like we are having healthy relationships either with ourselves or with others at all. There's a loss in that, a loss in kindness, a loss in a lot of areas. So Brooke Kikos is with us today. And she has switched careers from the beauty industry into helping women really heal from difficult childhood and abusive relationships. And we're going to talk a lot about how to have a healthy relationship with yourself and others, because I think if there's one thing we can absolutely control right now is how we treat others. And I live by that golden rule: treat others, the way you want to be treated. So maybe listening to this episode, you'll walk out of here with some tools that are really going to help you be able to have a healthy relationship with yourself. And I think it starts with yourself first before we're really able to have those healthy relationships with others. But Brooke's the expert, so she's going to be telling us all about that in a few minutes. But before we get to Brooke, I just want to thank our sponsor of today's show, Phoenix Drone Pros. And at Phoenix Drone Pros, we love what we do and are passionate about each and every drone photography and video shoot. We've been in business since 2015. Our talent and skills shows in the video production we deliver. We offer fast service for commercial real estate, movies, events, and construction site monitoring. We also provide drone virtual tours that are all the rage right now. These virtual tours are great for team building and entertainment. Contact us today at phoenixdronepros.com to schedule your shoot online or get more information. We're now franchising, so reach out for information on how you can purchase your own drone company today. Thank you, Phoenix Drone Pros, for being the sponsor of today's show. All right, let's get to Brooke Kikos. She's a trauma healing coach, a rapid transformational therapist, and NLP practitioner. Brooke specializes in empowering survivors to rewrite their stories. Her personal path: a testament to overcoming indoctrination, abuse, and toxic bonds, ignites her profound insight and unshakable dedication. She's a sought after speaker, a best-selling author, and a fervent advocate against religious abuse and domestic violence. Brooke, welcome to today's show.
Thank you so much for having me. I was resonating with everything that you were saying in the beginning. I was like, that is so true, right?
Yeah.
Realizing that
Yeah.
someone can, just by having those views on certain things, you can.
They
lose
never asked
friendship.
me if I ever had a flu shot before, and the answer to that was no. I don't believe in
Right.
I don't believe in
The
putting any of
same.
that in my body. Yeah. So it just wasn't it was an easy choice when another vaccination came out. I mean, they have so many vaccinations that come out, shingles, and I could go on and on and on. And I think they're right for certain people at certain times. Or if I was going to another country and they said, hey, you're not exposed to malaria here in the United States, but if your body goes over to this country, you're at very high risk of getting this, which could kill you. We really highly suggest that you get this shot before you go. Maybe I would consider that, but that would be an extreme situation. So I think we all have our personal opinions about our bodies and how we feel. And it had nothing to do with politics for me. It was my personal health decision. And no one had ever asked my previous medical records, in the conversation.
Exactly.
But I will tell you, in that moment, I loved that person the same as I had for 25 years, not for 1 second, because she started really showing and stating where she stood politically. Did I love her any less at all as a person, because we've shared so many years together? And I think that's the important part to remember, is we love an individual for them. And I've seen so many people lose friends over how they're voting or who they're supporting, or politically how they stand. And I just never remember that being a conversation in any of my friendships. So I know this is hurting people. I know that there are a lot of individuals walking around that do not have a healthy relationship with themselves. So let's rewind, because I talked about how you help women heal from the past, and you do that because of your own healing journey. So you've had some trauma and some pain. Did you want to touch on a little bit of that, or really what brought you to this point?
Yeah, for sure. I think, obviously when we have really deep trauma, and this can be, everybody can have a different level, right? We all in some sort of way have a little bit of trauma. Maybe, it's just not as significant as others. I grew up as, you kind of talked a little bit about indoctrination in a cult, which, really programmed us and conditioned us to act, behave, talk, do things a certain way. And if you went outside of that box, you were shunned or you were outcast. So it was, I kind of grew up in this space of like feeling a lot of shame, feeling a lot of guilt of wanting to go on this discovery process of even getting to know myself, and not even having the opportunity to do so because I was told who I was supposed to be. And then I had a father, that was very controlling. And if I didn't act perfect, if I didn't present myself in the way that he wanted me to inside of this society, this cult, I was punished. And so I've always had this belief of, God, I can never do anything right. I'm always doing everything wrong. I'm never going to make my dad happy. I'm never going to be the little girl that he wants, right? Because I was the kid that really went against the grain. I questioned everything. I didn't want to follow by the rules of the society. Like I wanted to go out and discover myself. And I think that's really the point of this, is a lot of the times when we've had these experiences where we haven't been allowed to even create a relationship with ourselves. And that's been like suppressed. And for me, it was through purity culture, right? No sex before marriage, being disconnected from my body, all of these things, and sex being really kind of something that's shameful or bad, in making me feel like that disconnection. I didn't get to create that relationship where I got to have freedom of choice. And I think that's really the biggest piece of why women kind of get stuck in relationships that are toxic or even abusive, right? Because if we don't have that relationship with ourselves, then it's really hard to know what we want to be treated like in another relationship. And we'll take less than because we actually view ourselves that way. And that was really my experience.
Yeah. Yeah. So you felt this way growing up. And so, really, for you to be able to be authentic and understand yourself, you didn't because you felt like that wasn't acceptable in your upbringing for you to really kind of explore who you were and the things that you enjoy or that you don't like or that help you feel at peace. I mean, there's a lot of behaviors and a lot of feelings we could go through. And I love it that they have that cartoon Inside Out for kids, even for adults, because
Yes.
as if anyone watches it, it goes through kind of all the little things that you experience in behavior and feelings. And then as she becomes a teenager, all of a sudden anxiety comes into role and embarrassment and all these things that she didn't have as a child. So it's so interesting to watch those things. So tell me a little bit about where did you discover when did you have a want or a need or discover like, hey, I kind of want to have, I don't think that the relationship I have with myself is healthy. Did someone say to you like, Brooke, that's not a healthy relationship? And you were like, huh? Like, did something like that happen? Or like, did you kind of get hit over the head by a 2x4? Where did it
Well, I
come
had a
from?
little bit of both.
Yeah.
A little bit of both, actually. I think I started to realize that I wasn't having healthy friendships.
Mm,
And that was my first key. And that was actually when I was still in this religious community where I was starting to see that I kind of attracted like the toxic friendships, like the people that kind of took advantage of me. It was like, it was very one-sided. I was giving everything and they were just taking. And I was like, why is this happening to me? Right. And I started to notice and witness that. And I started to go on this discovery journey of like what a narcissist was and what this really means. And everybody says this word, but really it's just a wounded individual that's kind of projecting their hurt and their pain onto you, right? And I didn't realize being such like an empath and feeling all of these things and all of this feelings from other people. I was taking so much of other people's stuff on. And that kind of started to awaken me to the fact that I was in an abusive relationship. I didn't know any different because my father was abusive. I witnessed it growing up. I was modeled it, right? So I then went and got trapped into the same cycle, the same pattern and dynamic. And I stayed in that for 17 years, unbeknownst to me. So the friendship piece started to kind of awaken me. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I think that I'm actually in this type of relationship.
yeah.
And that's kind of when I went on this like big, huge, I was like gobbling up all the information I possibly could. And some people are like, well, why didn't you know? Like, wouldn't that have been obvious? And people don't realize that when you have been raised and conditioned and only witnessed something like
Yeah.
what you're in, that's all you know. I didn't know what a healthy relationship was. I didn't know what love was. Nothing. I had no experience to understand that. And so once I found that out, I was like, oh my gosh. And that's kind of the awakening process that happened for me. And in that, I
Yeah.
started to realize that I was in a cult. And I ended up leaving the cult and the relationship in one fell swoop, not knowing what I was going to do, where I was going to go, how it was going to look, because I lost my family, my community, my identity, and just realized, okay, I've got to start over. Like I had two boys at this time. I knew I didn't want them to have the same life. I wanted them to have something different. And so I just said, I'm going to take this big giant leap and I'm going to go and do it.
Yeah.
I don't know what
It's
happened.
it's really scary. It's really scary to do that. And I had a very similar upbringing. I had a very abusive father as well, a lot of childhood traumas. And you don't know any different. I'm here to back you up on that. I got into another abusive relationship after that. Then I married someone that had drug and alcohol problems and I mean, it just goes on and on, right? And here, I think I'm not worthy enough to really marry someone that's great. And so I just keep, hanging out with the bottom feeders and they're not treating me well. And even when I did marry someone amazing, I didn't love myself. I didn't have a healthy relationship with myself. So there was not even a chance that he was going to be able to love me. And that was a huge issue in our marriage. And I didn't know it was me the whole time. Like I had no idea I was the problem until much later on in my life, when I realized like that poor guy never had a chance. And it's because I had gone most of my life without understanding myself or loving myself. And I spent, we're talking probably a good 30 years in my life like that. I didn't really start discovering who I was and the changes I needed to make till I was probably in my, early mid 30s. And it was like, wow, I'm not happy with who I don't even know who I am. I'm a mom, right? I identified as a mom. And that
Yeah,
was
help
like
me.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I
But
had.
but what do I believe? Who do I worship? What do I believe? Where do my values lie? What are the things that mean the most to me? Like all those basic values. I had never really done the work to discover any of that for myself. It's so crucial. So I'm assuming a female is having some of these same issues, have come from a background similar. Is it that they don't know where to start, how to heal, where to discover the pain, how to shift the pain? Is the pain showing up differently for them in their bodies? Is it showing up as weight and overeating, or harboring feelings, or hoarding is another one? Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit a lot of those actually, because it does, right? It shows up like what our mind suppresses, the body expresses. So your body one is gonna, when you're disconnected, which I lived a very dissociated life for 35 years of my life, right? Before I was really connected to my body and able to say, oh wow, I can actually feel what I'm feeling right now in this emotion, because now I feel safe enough to feel this emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of, you're going to recognize that, you're going to have the symptoms, and a lot of people don't realize that when you've been abused or you've been in these toxic environments, think of a plant. A plant cannot thrive and live in a toxic environment where you don't water it and the air is not clean or whatever, right? It's gonna wilt, it's gonna start to die. It's the same thing with us. We are not going to be able to survive in an environment that's toxic. It's really hard to heal in those places. It's really hard to be able to reflect and see, okay, what's going on here? What's the real reality of what's going on? And when we're in an abusive relationships, it's going to show up with anxiety. It's going to show up with fear. It's going to show up in, then you're going to begin to have physical symptoms of things that are going on because of the stress of being in an environment like that. And that's really what I began to notice. I mean, I'm still healing from all of that physical stress that my body took on because my nervous system was so dysregulated from being abused, all of the abuse. So it's like looking at the fact that it's going to show up in all of these ways, and whatever is happening for you, it's to take a moment to say, okay, looking at why. What's coming up here? Is this a repeated pattern? Is this still showing up? Are we still having the same fight?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Are you still having the same fight with your partner or a friend? Okay, it's something to dig deeper, be curious. Why is this still happening? Well, because something's not happening, something's not changing. Either you're not getting a need met, they're not getting a need met, there's a communication disruption, there's something going on here. And so it's just recognizing that you are always the best healer of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You always need guidance. I mean, I still have guidance all of these years later because you can always do more work on yourself. I don't ever say the journey's over. It's about being able to say that you can start to look and reflect in your life and see, how am I feeling? How does this person make me feel?
Yeah.
Right? Do they make me feel good? It's just about looking and digging deeper.
Do you still utilize guidance, like a higher powers guidance? I don't know if the cult that you were in, if God was a feature of that, because I know Scientology, that's not the case. Do you still have a higher power or a relationship outside of the religion you were in with someone or something, or that drives that for you, that gives you that kind of sense of peace or existence?
Yeah, that's such a complicated subject. We can talk about that for hours, so I'll try to keep it short here. Because after leaving a cult like system like that, and the programming that happens,
Yeah.
it's really hard. I had to do a lot of deconstruction. I'm actually still deconstructing 8 years later of some of those belief systems. But I would say that I did have a very much a spiritual awakening, because it happened for me to be able to recognize, okay, that there's something more than what I've been told.
Yeah.
I've been lied to, right? When I was in this cult, I was lied to. And I do believe that religion serves a purpose. I think my belief is every religion has some type of truth in it. And I think that people have picked and chosen what they want to create, and how they want to control people. But it's actually being able to say that, yeah, there is something that is a higher power, if you will, right? And we have access to this
Mm.
within our own intuition. And we have that own guidance system that I have recognized. And the more that you're able to become more connected with yourself and have that healthy relationship with yourself and love yourself, I feel like you just allow yourself to be guided in that way, because
Yeah.
you can start to actually listen to the intuition voice, and not this like space of fear or the ego, right? Trying to like kind of operate or control things, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
No, I
And
love that. There was a guy in front of me. My husband and I were on a plane last week, and there was a gentleman standing in front of us, and he had two tattoos down the back of his calves, and it said, "Fear God." And I was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't imagine fearing God, right? Like for me, that was like, whoa. And that was what he had tattooed on his body. So obviously he must believe that. But I looked at my husband and I said, imagine a life where you walked around and you feared, God.
that was
And
me.
oh yeah. And I will tell you, I've interviewed other ladies here on this podcast that told me that they were raised like they would cry because they were raised to fear God. And I'm like, whoa, that is like so intense, that of a child to feel that way, like that. I just couldn't even imagine. So,
Have
um,
dreams that God was going to come and destroy me because I wasn't righteous enough. Because
yeah,
that's what you're like imprinted as a child, that if you don't do what you're supposed to, God's going to destroy you. And so,
wow.
I mean, as a little, can you imagine like a little girl just being like, oh my God, well, I better be a good girl,
Right.
otherwise God's going to come down from the sky and kill me, right? Like, and just having these images in your mind
Yeah.
and that fear is really scary. And that's really not
Yeah.
what it's meant to be.
Yeah. So for someone who really isn't, maybe they don't have trauma from a religion or something like that, there's still a process, I believe, no matter what, because there is so much brainwashing that happens to us that we don't realize. And it could be from messages that we hear on a regular on social media, from other people we're surrounded with in corporate America, where you live in your neighborhood. I mean, there's a lot, right? That happens on a regular basis. Where are you helping women get to so they can get to a point where they recognize that and know, like, these are my beliefs, these are my values, this is who I am, and they know what aligns and what doesn't align with them? Because what if in the future, if they find a path that they want to go down, how would they know, like you said, or listening to their intuition, but through that guidance, how is that happening for them?
For sure. I think first it starts from a foundational place, because a lot
Yeah.
of women that comes to work with me are still in an abusive relationship, or just or have been out of them and
Yeah.
recognize that something's not right. Like they can't find a partner because they're continuing to attract the same type of partner, and they're just feeling all of these things, right? So they're searching, right? And that's the
Yeah.
first piece, right? When you're searching and you're curious, great. You're now the student that's ready for the teacher. And so I think that, you're able to go back into the foundational piece. Okay, what happened in your childhood? And that's where I come from, the trauma informed background is, okay, let's get really understanding of what happened, what what messages were you giving as a child?
Yeah.
How were you conditioned to now still be in survival mode and being stuck in this space that you're in? So once we get those, we're able to kind of go through and rewire the brain and create like a new sense of self, a new sense of belief, of thought pattern, of being able to actually embrace a new way. And it doesn't have to take long. We think this sounds like, oh my gosh, it must take years and years. It doesn't have to take long when you work with the part of the brain that is the subconscious. And that's the kind of the work I do with RTT and hypnosis, right? When we work through a pattern, we work through a belief, and we're able to really transform that in a short amount of time. And women are able to move forward with their life because now they're starting to know who they are. They're starting to believe that they're enough and that they're worthy. And then that means that they have boundaries. They don't choose, as you said, the bottom feeders, right? The losers of the pack, right? They're able to now see what they want and know what they want, and not think differently or let anybody else make them think that they need to put themselves down.
I love that because they grow what I would call a sense of self, and it's strong, and they know who they are. And I think that's important for every woman listening to this. If you feel like you don't know who you are and couldn't explain that to someone else and have a true sense of self, and you are allowing others' opinions to slide you one way or slide you another way, then you don't have a true sense of yourself. And you need to be able to stand strong in what that is. And I'm so glad that you brought that up. Brooke, I know so many people are going to want to reach out to you. What is the best way for them to do that from here? We've got a lot of your links below, but I would love to know how they should reach out.
Yeah, they definitely can find me on my website, lifecoachinggoddess.com, or they can just send an email or, give me a text, whatever. My phone number's on the website. I am open to discussion and setting up a chat to kind of see where they're at and get to know them.
All right. You guys heard it from Brooke, a lifecoachinggoddess.com. You can also follow her on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook, of course, our social media platforms that are out there. Pick which one is your favorite. I love Instagram. Instagram's like my jam. I love it. It's where I post, and then, they just flow through to Facebook, but I love me some Instagram. Yeah. So that's where I go to see all my grandkids every day, kind of figure out what's happening with them. Even though they live like 4 blocks away, they all have busy lives. You don't see them every day. So, Brooke, it's been a pleasure having you here. And I know all of the women listening, and I just want to share one last thing with them. I know they got so much out of today. You're the only you that's ever been. You're the only you that will ever be. So I really feel that that's a very strong message for someone to hear today, which is find your sense of self, have a healthy relationship with yourself, and then you'll have a healthy relationship with others. But we can't be working on our relationship with others if we don't work on our relationship with ourselves first. And that's really what Brooke is here to help you do. And no friends can help you get through that trauma. They can help you get through grief, but they cannot help you through trauma ever. And so that is for a professional, and Brooke has professional tools that she uses to be able to get you through that and to release that and not have to go back through the trauma. That's what I love about what you do. You don't have to revisit and go through all the pain to release it. So I highly recommend lifecoachinggoddess.com. And you reach out to her and schedule a call with her to find out if what you're going through is something that she can help with. So, Brooke, thank you for being our authenticity guide today on our show, Take the Leap. And until next time, for everyone listening, don't forget, be you and be strong. Bye-bye for now.
We hope you enjoyed our show today, as our guests shared their secrets on designing their life by taking the necessary leaps to expand their influence and attract the right people and clients into their lives. To start these easy steps for yourself, be sure to visit www.colleenbiggs.net/freebies to download the 7 ways to increase your exposure today.